Move on with finish this introduction session of Confucius by a translator whose name is David Hilton, one of the best translators actually. So you are not able to have this. This is only a physical copy I have, but I think it's not a lengthy reading. Today I will try to move on to finish the whole thing. Okay, just read it scarce with comments. So. Okay, here we are. So it's going to be in page 221. So Confucius was the first great figure in this independent intellectual class, which is a class. Okay, let's read that paragraph ahead. The old social order that have now collapsed entirely, and this intellectual began struggling to create a new one. Although this was one of the most virulent and chaotic periods in Chinese history, it's also the golden age of Chinese philosophy. For there was 100 schools of thought tried in invasion. What is this new social order should be like? These schools are founded by thinkers who wandered the country with their disciples, teaching and trying to convince the various rulers to put their ideas into practice. For the desperate times have given them an urgent sense of a political mission. Confucius was the first great figure in this independent intellectual class, and China's first self-conscious philosopher who can be historically verified in any sense. As with most intellectual figures in ancient China, where little is known of Confucius' life, but the essential outline of that life took on mystical proportions, and the archetypical example of the Confucian way. Through his devotion to self-cultivation, Confucius made himself into a great sage and devoted himself passionately into the public good in spite of hardships such as hunger, homelessness, unemployment, and life-threatening violence. Confucius was born in Lu, where the true Zhou culture tradition was especially strong. To a family that has once been part of the Shang, I think it's Song. Why Song? Shang, that's true. Aristocracy. Shang is as we mentioned, is a dynasty before Chou. Am I right? So yeah. So he was very conscious of inheriting both the Shang and the Chou culture. That he never stopped looking into the golden eras of those dynasties for his models of a human society. So he was a selective and idealized version of the past. So his was a selective and idealized version of the past. Confucius' Chinese name was Kong Qiu or Kong Zhongyi, and he's also known as Kong Zhou or Kong Fuzi, meaning Master Kong. It is from a second that his honorable name Kong Fuzi that the Latinized Confucius derived. Kong Fuzi, teacher, like people talking to Jesus as rabbi, right? So that kind of name. So. Although his family technically belonged to the literate aristocracy that has been reduced to very humble means some generations earlier after its migration from a neighboring state where it has apparently lost favor with the rulers. So he was born to the literary class, but independent of the usual tie that a class hand to ruling interests. Unusual family situation, which anticipated exactly the situation of the independent intellectual class he did so much to establish. Are you guys okay there? Mm-hmm. Relax, okay? So Confucius devoted himself to studies at a young age, and members held a number of menial governmental positions, but as such a brilliant and outspoken character was surely not welcome in government. So Confucius pursued his political mission as a teacher man, not surprisingly. This was an underly sexist culture, means man and woman mostly segregated, okay, so who aspire to in social interaction, so who aspire to governmental service. In this capacity, it was widely admired. Students eagerly sought, and various rulers knew them to be the the best-trained men in the empire. A cruel irony for this meant that most of the prominent disciples became high officials serving the royal families. Confucius detested because they were undermining society by usurping power. In his late 40s, Confucius took the first several significant government positions in Lu, the highest of which was Minister of Justice. But at the age of 56, realizing that his way would always be ignored there, Confucius left Lu and spent 13 years traveling from state to state, advising rulers, hoping the idea would be put in practice, and so lead more humane society. Although he was known and respected as a sage by a number of the rulers who visited, none showed any inclination to employ him or enact his ideas. Until he disappointed and his failure to have any real political impact, he finally returned home in the late 60s and devoted himself to teaching and establishing classic texts that preserve the Asian cultural tradition. One primary surviving source for the teaching of Confucius is the Analects, or more literally, the selected sayings. The book defining characteristic is its aphoristic form. It is a college of brief aphoristic fragments, is pairing with little supporting context. Its lack of systematic precision extends to the language as well, for there was a little sense of precise philosophical language prior to Confucius. In the effort to articulate the ideas, Confucius was borrowing other old terms and reshaping their meanings. Indeed, the Confucian philosophical world could be outlined by defining small constellations of such terms as key terms, but in most cases, their meanings shift each time they are used and so remain somewhat obscure. So rather than systematically developing a philosophical system, the book attains its sense of coherence through a process of creation. The difficulties posed by the text itself are complicated by the question of authenticity. A good share of the book's fragments assumed to represent the master's teachings handed down accurately by his disciple, but the great meaning clearly do not. Numerous versions of the master's sayings were added over the course of centuries, a time when the concept of individual authorship is not being firmly established, and much extraneous material was included by various editors, sometimes with the apparent intent of smuggling their preferred idea into the canonical texts. Although most of these fragments add depth and complexity to the text, some contradict its overall spirit. It's also clear that very little of what the master said was recorded. A great deal of what was recorded was not included in the analytic we now have. Mentions often cite the master, for instance, and most of those citations are not included in the analytics. But for all the concerns about how authentic the text is and how accurately or thoroughly it portrays the historical Confucian thought, the analytic still possesses the impressive stylistic unity and represents, as a matter of historical fact, the fundamental body of thought that shaped the Chinese civilization for over 2,000 years. Do you guys understand what I'm reading? It's historical fact. It's not that difficult, so continue reading. See if you hear.
Confucius's social philosophy derives from a rational empiricism, a methodology which represents a total break with the Shang spiritualism. And this is perhaps why it has proven so enduring. Blatant power politics had made it impossible to believe in heaven, let alone Shangdi, as a transcendental source of order and legitimacy. So he tried to rescue the fragmented Shao culture by putting it on a more viable, rational, and secular basis. Confucius developed a social philosophy from the empirical observation that human society is a structure, a weave of relationships between individuals who each occupy a certain locus in that structure: parent and child, ruler and subject, friend and friend, merchant and customer, and so forth. Confucius invested this anthropological insight with a philosophical dimension by recognizing that a healthy community depends upon an attitude of human caring among its members. most especially its government, which should nurture first, teach second, and only then govern.
3 steps, repeat. Nurture.
Nurture, teach, and then govern.
Nurture means most food, am I right? Living situation, so it's physical needs. Second, teaching intellectual need, am I right? So, or spiritual need. Govern is what? Need for order, need organization, right? So, yeah.
Always looking to the past as a source of wisdom, Confucius saw that societies flourished when their citizens, the rulers above all, honored this moral principle, and inevitably crumbled when they ignored it. Even the powerful, transcendental glue of the Shang theocracy couldn't withstand the corrosive influence of the Shang emperor's depredations. But Confucius's social philosophy goes well beyond this moral dimension, for he described the web of social responsibilities as a system of ritual. Li, see key terms.
The word ritual actually is his translation. It's owner system, as I shared. Okay, so yeah.
Ritual is a crucial instance of how Confucius forged a philosophy by reshaping certain key terms.
Let me do a comment so don't throw halfway
Sure.
confusion there. The Bible, the law given by Moses defining certain setups, am I right? Especially, for example, the priesthood in the center of Jerusalem, in the temple, everything. Even the king and his officials in the civil governmental capacity has to yield to the council and respect this spiritual establishment represented by same as the priesthood. And right today we're talking about religious, but in those days it's basically God's way of governing and humanity's order sense. Am I right? So it's the same construct actually is what Confucius tried to establish well. So therefore, ceremonials like a gathering, tabernacle time, Passover time, go to temple, offer sacrifice. All those actually is more than ritualistic performances. That's the whole law. What meant that's in Paul speaking. The law is a spiritual, but if man's mind, like a corrupt king would be, or corrupt priest would be, or perhaps the residents of the land would be, making sense to you. If their mind is corrupted, they can't really appreciate the whole setup is actually a spiritual setup to provide undergirding righteous, just, and prosper life in the fear of the Lord. Am I in the way how God blesses people? So it's here. So the ritualistic setup or certain external performing, acting out. Am I certain? Certain rituals or set up with, it's actually try to embody a culture, a cultural respect, a cultural honor, a cultural actual love, so that's what it means. But just like in the Bible, the people continue to struggle with this spirit of the law and this will of doing life together as a whole, so it's in Chinese, this ideal persists or outlined by Confucian teachings and pursued by many his followers, So, but even the rulers honor it through the history, but seldom really practiced, So when it's practiced, interesting enough, all the time, the nation actually flourishes. So just like in the biblical history, So anyway, just want to talk about that. So go ahead. Yeah.
Ritual is a crucial instance of how Confucius forged a philosophy by reshaping certain key terms, for it had been a religious concept associated with the worship of spirits. The spiritualist regime that had dominated China since the rise of the Shang had crumbled. Although Confucius recognized sacrifices...
That is, here is a lack of understanding of the real history happened in one of Confucius' book called Hong Fan. Hong Fan is a book, actually, it's a council that the leaders or the start of the Zhou dynasty is learning from the former prince. Ask him, so it's a corrupt king, but it's a prince, it's a righteous king, righteous one. It's heir, actually, to the kingdom. But he asked to have this council. So the history in those days, you can make a record. So recorded the sayings of this prince, his idea how the nation should be governed. So it's written in peace. Okay, this official documents. So in those days, the king's action and words are recorded as historical records. So evidently, this piece was ended by this prince and submitted as we how to govern. In China, it's almost called the original constitution. Even it does not seem to be a constitution, but it has its governing philosophies. Okay, so the governing philosophy actually measuring the whole transition Israeli is not spiritualist talking about. So there is a transition clash, even in the transition from Xia dynasty to Zhou dynasty is from almost like worship different gods, so to this monolithic God. I think you read that book. Did you read that book?
Which book now?
The book I'll give to you.
Yeah.
Did he mention that transition? Well, he might. No, I didn't read that book. So my understanding, there is a huge transition from a place because religious and worship and governing philosophy set up. Okay, so something changed, fundamentally changed. So anyway, yeah.
It's interesting. The following sentences actually go right along with what.
Is that right? I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Well, just with what Confucius does with that framework of thinking, because it says here, although Confucius recognized sacrifices to the spirit world, he didn't necessarily believe any of the religious claims associated with such worship.
Yeah.
For him, the value of such practices lay in the function they served in the ritual structure of society. This suggests an explanation for Confucius's oft-noted refusal to speak of the spirit realm. To affirm the reality of that realm would be duplicitous.
It's understanding you study, actually they have some things very important. Okay, said that he 不言怪力鬼神 means he don't want to talk about demonic, ghosts, strange miracles, strange supernatural phenomena, rather. Okay, so, but at the same time he said, I have known my destiny from heaven when I was 50 years old. So, then he said, when I'm 70 years old, I'm able to conduct my life with a freedom in my heart, but I never crossed the boundary lines. I never committed immoral or indecent, unclean, sinful, whatever. Says my point. So you can see from 50, he finally settled that he was one sent by God. This is something very interesting on the understanding. So he have destiny from above, basically that's what he said. From God, literally. Then he said, then he assigned himself to a way improving his inner character, right? His way of thinking, he handled himself, talked to people. Now 50, he was already a great teacher, right? Very influential already. So through 70, this period of time, 20 years, he was able to self-enlighten, discipline. And self is not right words. He getting enlightened and disciplined to a way that he always said, I'm a free man, basically, and he's a righteous man. Says he's a free man, it's not for sinful things, rather for the righteous things, the good things, right? So it's unbelievable, something you think about it. So there's a part of it that seems very casual to you guys, but this part of it becomes the ideal, just like Christianity, we look at Jesus' life as ideal. This is a part of self-improvement, self-enlightenment. It becomes the central thrust of later followers, Confucius followers, and major philosophers flourish in time. I can talk to you more, but some major schools of practitioners try to say how I enlighten myself, how I improve myself, how I can get told that I have any destiny. I'm making sense to you? So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
To affirm the reality of that realm would be duplicitous, and to deny it would undermine the ritual efficacy of practices associated with it. It was in this context that Confucius extended the use of ritual to include all the caring acts by which we fulfill our responsibilities to others and the community. Hence, the entire weave of everyday social life takes on the numinous aspect of the sacred.
Let me turn the heater so you can take it off. Are you cold?
I'm alright myself.
Is it kind of noisy or sorry?
No, it's good one. I just want you to feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's good. The jacket keeps me warm.
Wear a big jacket. It's not the most comfortable way of sitting.
This one's actually really comfortable.
Very comfortable. Okay, so yeah. Go ahead.
This is a society in which individual identity is defined entirely in terms of the community. There is little sense of the inner self in the Analects. The ritual social fabric is paramount, and individual identity is defined entirely in terms of a person's social roles.
So what is that? The key word is
Identity.
identity, social roles. That's interesting. I didn't learn the things, so.
Yeah, I think we're getting probably the most important part of this.
Yeah, it's more part.
introduction.
Yeah, so yeah, nice. Elijah wanted to hear this part. Okay, so yeah, take heart in those things. To think about your own life, why you want to learn God, why we want to learn these things, why I'm interested in those things, your dad is interested in those things, so you build a context for us to talk about deeper things of life, deeper things of what God wants to do with our life, with his people, so you can understand the law of the book very well. You can't read the Bible as a religious manual, which is or theological theological framework. That's why I read the book differently, because I came from a different background. I read the book differently. I read David's life differently. I didn't just look at him as if he's just merely one have a heart for the Lord or have some supernatural visitation, supernatural fear of the Lord. Those certainly happened. But look at him, how he grew to be a true shepherd. What that means, really. Do you understand what it means to be a true shepherd? You may think you know. Then he can thrust into a situation where dangerous and where it seems weird. He said, well, who is this Goliath challenging God's people? There's something there is more than personal heroism, am I right? So I'll just have a heart for God's people, love God so much. There's something, take a hold on your heart. He just said, well, we are God's people, chosen people, This is not our fate, this is not our portion. He's so acquainted with God. He has no problem to stand in that place and said, you know what? Goliath and all your Philistines, before this mighty God that I know, the history that I learned of our people, do you think you're better than Pharaoh? Do you think you're better than whoever opposing us in the land of the giants? So he's a giant, everybody. So he's just literally able to recall the whole history of their people. So you think, is he unlearned, or he's very thoughtful about what he learned, what he heard? It's not the thrust in the moment, it's there, right? So we know that he battled different ways and he think about those things. Now those experiences with David's reflective and meditative mind, you can see that in his Psalms. He will turn to that experience, wow, what does this happen? I just killed a bear. So I just killed a lion. Why? Would you think it's like a foolish young man to think that he did something very strange? Or he said, well, God, you did something there with me or for me, through me. And who is this God? So we're interested to know who is this God with him. And then he learned, we actually slew the giants of the land. We actually chased everybody down. We actually slew the best king in the world. In a sense, in our world. So, wow, I'm chosen for this purpose. I'm here, standing in the gap. This mighty God had done this great exploits for our people, great deliverance for our people. Give us this land. The Philistines just begin to swarm over it, to rob us, to oppress us, and try to kill us, destroy us. You think I'm standing here for no reason? Dion says my point. He has a whole culture, whole history was before him, in front of him. More in this name, let me see. Who are your Philistines to feed the mighty God? I'm talking about then later days, the whole history of judges, the fillers of the priesthood, and successes, Samuel, and the filler of Saul, was all have bearing on him, right? So he was acquainted with the law. Do you think God didn't give him the scrolls? And God sent the priest carry all the scrolls to him. When David was more than a warrior and tried to survive, do you think he will not listen to the priest who had endowed with all the secret record or the stories of the past? He will not spend time to learn and fellowship in those things. He's very interested. He was well versed in the scriptures. We know that. Where that came from? His tribe was minimal. Small tribe of, He was from a background that has no standing. His family is not have great standing in society. And he was not a descendant priesthood. He was not Levi. I look at things differently, right? So how he get it? God sent all this privilege to him in the midst of troubles and seems chaotic and uncertain in life. But David see a different picture. He said that everyone sent to him he know was for his education. So he grabbed it. He grabbed it with enthusiasm, grabbed it with great intensity, with interest. He understands my point, so then he learned from those things. So when he was 30, with all the trials, failures, all the dangers, and all the, up and downs of life, he was fully equipped to be a king. God said, "You're ready to be a king." So first things, as David we know goes on, but yes, he did military subduing the nations, united the nation, his own tribes, their own tribe together. But eventually he had to start a kingdom different than what? Than Saul's kingdom. Saul never really have a good kingship, good kingdom going on. Making sense to you? Just to any other king. But David said, no, my kingdom and my kingship had to be founded, minister from a totally different orientation with a different region. So where that came from? How he did it? You can see he began to, first thing said, I got to have God's ark at his altar to come to the central place. First that was informed. He allowed God for sure, but where is that intensity was informed? That's because everything was devastated. And he knows his kingdom and his elevation to be a king was to restore, build a culture center. With a culture center, he understands the ruling center. But he set up. He said, well, let's get this done. God, can you do it? But if you don't do it, my kingship is not have a good start. And God said, hold on. Let's slow down. It's still a transition for this process. Your son will build a temple for me, not you. So here's a man sitting in palaces prepared for the temple. Do you understand my point? God gave him the palace. So David had a clear understanding what he's bridging kingship, the kingship bridging from one order to another, what it means, right? So, and also he required, just like Moses cannot enter the promised land, he cannot build a temple. He cannot lay a single straw in the temple. That was a pain to him. All the visions, all the understanding was happened. You understand my point? He knows the son will do it. My point, in the midst of all these things, what do you think David's passionate about? He understands the culture destiny for him, his people. He understands what God's vision for his people. My point is for Elijah to pay attention to those things, so eventually you're able to open your mind to interest in certain things which is matter to life, matter to understanding the scriptures, right? So, so anyway, so I'm just talking. So I'm not a high scholar, but at least I can look at the material, look at certain things from a different point of view. So yeah, go ahead.
All of the Confucian moral virtues apply only in the social context. One cannot speak of a person being virtuous in isolation. And there is indeed a kind of spiritual clarity in the selflessness of this ritual weave, a clarity that became a defining aspect in the structure of Chinese political and spiritual consciousness throughout the ages. As it has shaped Chinese society for millennia, one must assume this Confucian system has proven useful to those in power. Confucius was struggling to describe this ritual structure, so he naturally emphasized the individual's social role. This led to the appearance of an undue emphasis on the proper behavior of subordinates. And this is the aspect of Confucian thought that has proven so appealing to the interests of power. The brand of Confucianism wielded throughout the centuries as power's ideology of choice focused on select ideas involving selfless submission to authority, parental, political, masculine, historic, textual. And the sacred ritual dimensions of these hierarchical relationships only made them that much more oppressive. It is this aspect of the Confucian tradition that has become so problematic in modern times, for intellectuals came to recognize it as the force that was preventing China's modernization. But selfless submission plays little part in the thought of Confucius himself. And as his thought was modified over the centuries by thinkers and social forces, this aspect could very well have been replaced. Indeed, not long after Confucius' death, Mencius had already challenged these hierarchies with a fierce insistence on the responsibilities of those in power, even declaring the people more important than the ruler. Nevertheless, China's ruling interests have rarely concerned themselves with the egalitarian ideas so central to Confucius's thought: social justice, political dissent, the role of intellectuals as social critics.
Comments there. You finish your reading there. Go ahead. Yes. Finish this portion. Yeah.
I finished right here.
Okay. There. Yeah. Well, in Confucius' time, you can see Confucius teaching based on certain records and certain thing passed on to him. So he was not writing his own ideas. So this Analects actually a book more actual textual concerning those classics that he was able to inherit and edit and teach based on. My point is that those discussions have a context, have a thing that the receiver, the teachers in here Confucius already based on something. So unfortunately, later comers, they don't necessarily understand the wording or the teaching are surrounding this discussion or this embodiment of a systematic teachings. Therefore, they draw Confucius' idea separate from this context. You understand my point? Mimic said, okay, when Confucius talking about them, who is a ruler, who is a people, to do this, do that, he is proposing a system or a culture set up outside the context, the text that already existed. To the contrary, actually, Confucius would use his discussions, his teaching to expound the things that were common to people. You understand my point? You understand me? So evidently, the real substance that it was embodied in Confucius' teaching, talking about society change, setup, okay, how to acting in a certain social hierarchies. The things already set up there. So here's the key. So one of the drawing from these things that it seems contradictory, seems try to say that Confucius didn't think about those things. The truth of the matter is those things are already said. There are already things in the text. It's already clearly as a bell identified. It's not Confucius trying to produce his own ideas that later on somebody has corrected. For example, who is the most important entity in the kingdom setup or in the government setup. Confucius said, I corrected it. That's modern invention. To think Confucius said, actually, the people is not the first object for any rulership, any governmental setup. That was already clearly said in the old text everywhere. That's my point. Everywhere talking about people, the government, the king is about the shepherd. The government is about servant. That's what's embodied there. You understand my point? But later on, latecomers, they have abused the text. They have a non-cohesively think about it. Especially those people not necessarily like Confucius' idea or like the history we have. This is continue trying to find a little thing to challenge the fundamentalism, right? So to create friendly series, just like people do with the Bible, So today, non-believer to pick out anything, So either they are heard, there's a TV popular person said, point out the scripture in James said God is a jealous God. So try to attribute God is a God of jealousy in the humanistic understanding what jealousy is. What that word means is God is a required pure devotion, pure love, right? So it's just like pure love between two lovers. Sorry, that young people. Would you have that person just do anything he wants to treat that love, that relationship with impurity, without devotion? Or rather, because that is embodiment, that is the best for love in relational, therefore, I'm not going to have a third party to get involved in the field, right? That's basics of pure love, what it is. Devotion to one another means. So it's in relation with God. God said, I need that kind of purity, devotion, right? So you understand my point. So, however, you can see this talking head has no idea who God is, or the scripture really talking about, have no patience even study that the words what it means. So he pull out the context and give to the popular general public of American culture this day. I said, yeah, look, the Bible said God is a God of jealousy. He's not good character. If it's a God and he's jealous, that's why he killed people. That's why he did compel people to do all kinds of weird things. Therefore, this book is a bad book, teaching you bad things. This God is a bad God. Everything he related to God there's no credibility. He's like any fallen man, any bad character out there. He's not perfect. He's not good. We don't have to listen to this book. We don't have to edit. So totally undermined by one statement there seems reasonable, but undermined everything about the God, everything this book is about. Total ignorance and biased. So is latecomers a man who can see these people in every school, every history, every tradition. Mockers, people have very, very less patience and interest to know the source, the reason, the substance of a matter, but they have all kinds of strange opinions. They will give you comment because they have a following, and people don't necessarily are wise and patient and humble and teachable, more than those essence things. Let's try to impart to you guys is never be impressed and be followed with such a people. Unfortunately, human society in any culture oftentimes is the people that are most noisy, most influential. So what is the cure for this? What is the what was the word? Like you getting infected, what do you call it? Antibody, whatever, how to do this is really hold on to the basics. Books like the Bible, books like Analects, certain books we're talking about, there's a reason why wise men through the ages show respect for those things. And let's get a hold of them. Do not be quick to criticize. In the sense, my point, respect. And then after you respect, get a hold of what we need, then we criticize it. We can say, there's a limitation to the things. My point, I try to give you an illusion. My criticism of Martin Luther and Augustine is not uninformed. It's not just opinion. If you look at what they produce, where the source is, you can look at the whole the history and say, oh, that's intellectual head. That's not necessarily from purely God's revelation. God used it. God's people benefited by it, or society benefited by those things. But doesn't mean it's a pure source. That's my point, and the impact of it is purely God. It's more a man-made social phenomenon. In the sense, my point. Therefore, the philosophy cannot endure in the end. Their ideology cannot endure in the end. But there are books. It's literally from a divine revelation. That's what I try to tell you. The source is from above. When you found such a source in your life, grab at it, meditate on it. Even this very simple thing, simple words. Jesus said, God is love. Well, that is a simple statement. Love one another as unto, love one another. My command is, that's very simple. And every believer, every preacher, everyone who believes in Jesus' teaching, try to be a follower, just will take that, say, yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I will do that. Yes, I will teach how to do that. Am I right? Nobody in the day will say, I'm not doing that. I'm serving God, I try conduct, or do that. But is really is with what Jesus said, or what is expected, what is tried to taught, or many versions, souls and practices. I mean, there's a lot of them, right? Talk about how to do that. It's just simple. Okay. Can you love one another based on your own context? Now that's very important. If you think it's only a young man of the American society in your time, in your generation, in the people you associate with, that's the context you apply. That's how I love one another. You done your best. It's rightfully, you did your best, am I right? But is that what God really meant, or Jesus meant? What if you're a young man in China 500 years ago? Is that the same thing? Can you do the same thing? Would you practice your life in the same way? We're might be different, right? Actually, if to love or to practice and love the culture, fundamentals, okay? So everything changed. There is something you have to change with time, with situations, with peoples. But I'm talking about the fundamentals. But Jesus saying don't change, right? God doesn't change, right? So they have to be real. What is real for American today, in your generation, has to be real 5 years ago if you get hold of God's love. That doesn't change. So if it changed, it's unbelievable for American today. That means you're not knowing and practicing the genuine love. Jesus try to tell you to embody. That's why Paul said Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Unchangeable attributes. Now, when you get a hold of those things, that is just like a pure gold. That is something you can just bypass. Because I don't want to learn to love as American in today, and then learn another way of love 500 years ago in another location as another race, whatever. You know, says I don't want to learn to be a slave in Paul's time, how to practice love, just particulars, So in the sense, I'm pertaining to those changeable elements of life, changeable ways of life. Whether I'm a slave, on a rich prince, or today's maybe a free citizen, in different government, in different history context, but I have no God and His love, and I try to imagine to learn to love in the same way. That's why, in that point, from that kind of solid, pure, and this unchangeable nature, unchangeable substance of this godliness in you, you can then pretty much have a very good standard to measure when people come to you. Let me show you how to love. I know better than others about love, about God's love. You said, do you know what you're talking about? Because a believer, simple humility was that, whoa, I need to learn much wisdom, know the Lord Jesus Christ to his fullness, and I can talk about that kind of love. Am I right? So, do you understand my point? So, the people who really love God as the people, they don't necessarily always blow out and say, I love you, I love you, I love you. They say, be holy, be righteous, repent, be holy, be perfect. Look unto God, am I right? Look at the image of Christ. Be like Christ. Do you understand my point? They don't replace another way of love by their own imagination, their own culture, their own time. Nor you pray for us. However, the devil and man's pride continue going to do this again and again. And as Moses in one character, even through the ages, religion and man's pride has drive people crazy, literally. But the fundamentals, they don't know. One of the mystery for sonship, we talk about the sonship reading, is actually you are everything God wants you to be if you know you're nothing. Don't pretend to be anything without the thing God gives to you. Let's think about Elijah. Elijah, you're loving God, right? You know God loves you, right? So, simple diagnosis. Now self-reflection has to go to this kind of a direction, go to this kind of depth. Then you can say, I'm nothing. You don't go there, just say, I'm nothing. I just think I'm nothing. I just don't. That's a shallow and ignorant and superficial kind of faith or understanding who you are. I'm not trying to trouble your soul, okay? But you go know yourself better than you know God's better. When God, you know God better, you know yourself better. That's just a natural cycle for going forward and increasing God. That's my point. So we can say that nobody will tell Elijah is not God-fearing, God-loving young man. And nobody said Elijah designed his future and designed his relation in life without God's want to be without God's input. Am I right? That's impossible in this state to say. There may be entertainment thoughts, whatever, struggles, but the fundamentals we can 100% be sure Elijah is one God loves, and he loves God. He learning how to love God and how to help God love him better. Right? Make sense to you? That's the fundamentals. Now, however, then seeking how much yourself in it. Let's think about Elijah. Don't blame me, okay? Then how much has you think about, I'm a man. I'm going to be a man, from a young man to be a man. How much you think about? If you think like a man, then you contradict, say that kind of life is different than a woman. is that sonship life? I'm talking to you loud here, okay? So in sonship, there's no, well, interesting, huh? No male, no female. So that kind of love and relationship expression of a sonship life cannot be expressed by you being a man or a woman. That's strange. Just as a young man, can you even entertain that? You're like, what that means? This is hard, am I right? So it's like telling a cow not to be a cow. What it means to be an animal. Seems very strange, am I right? So are you mean I'm a fish? Yeah, there's something about that. It's a uniquely common. Very simple. But in that, it's elevated to you actually. You don't have a life animal. You're not an animal life anymore. That can only be accomplished not by comparing the fish on the ant on the elephant. You can actually use different way of life. In sonship, therefore, no male or female on the realm of human beings. That's impossible. That's impossible. Then we struggle different today, different sex, different kind of transgender, whatever. We're still struggling whether I choose, have the choice to be a man. But nobody said, I don't want to be a man or a woman. Nobody. If anybody declared to the world, said, I can possibly be not a man or a woman, I don't have this or I can have double choice, whatever choice, but it's still a choice. If they said, I literally is not confined by this division, this identities, that's impossible. Well, that's exactly what God wants that to be. His song, maturity, elevation for life, understanding of life to be. That's inhuman almost, unless you understand what the spiritual life is really about. Do you understand my point? Unless you understand, let's see another thing. Elijah, what do you think about you being an American young man? What do you think about in South America? It look like you don't envision it, right? So you may experience it. Nor you go to Africa. Can you imagine you being one of those orphanages? So what their life look like? Do you think you will be privileged and blessed equally to have the possession of a sonship, education, everything, just like anyone? Or you will say, I'm a naturally disadvantaged. Because I'm African, orphanage, I have harder life, it's impossible for me to know God. Am I? Would not you think about those terms? I don't have the Bible, I don't have teachers, I don't have all kinds of endowments of life. Impossible for me. I want to tell you the truth. That's so wrong thinking. Actually, in a certain way, maybe more, if God going to choose a man, if really going to educate a man, I will guarantee you may more disadvantaged to know God than one actually come from a totally that kind of background. I'm the testimony of that. Because too much endowment, too much blessing, too much information can actually give us a lot of kind of misleading idea, confusing idea of how to approach God, right? So we think everybody know about it. We can't fellowship in the way that people don't know how to read, but he walk with God. The people can't speak, but he walk with God. People cannot see, but they walk with God. We can't imagine what that look like. Okay, Elijah, pray for us. No, I want you to sit vision. So we're not going to do this scholarly or intellectual teaching, but we're going to try to always root back to what God wants to do with our lives. So go ahead and pray for us.
Yes, Lord, I agree with these teachings, Lord.
I'm making sense to you, Elijah, what I share. Am I? I'll try to challenge you, try to just make applicable, right? The thing we talk is not lofty as you think. The word applicable, so you have to learn to really hear the thing being shared, taught, and ask relevant questions. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Lord, I pray that you would just, Lord, continue to reveal more about these things to us. Lord, I pray that we would not be wavered, Lord, or sucked in by the ways that man has tried to twist your own words, Lord. And
many young men still care about what people said about in social media. Today's, has that every day about talk about this. Well, if you know God and want to know God, the first thing I think, I better know what God think about me. From that point, I know everything, what a man think about me, how to judge them, how to discern them. I'm not moved by them. I can entertain myself, I can have a lot of fun with that, but that's not going to shape my identity, shape my opinion about myself. Rather give me the foundation and clarity how to discern where others is. Maybe somehow through the interactions I can show the will of God is. I'm not drifty. I'm not being identified them. I'm not going to fill into the framework. By the way, who are they? especially this young pairs of modern day culture, this popular culture, they have grip over their life all about, and no touch God in their life. Why should I care what they think? I need to tell them with all clarity and boldness, and sharpness if needed, challenge them to the core. Said, do you know God what they think about you? I know what God thinks about me. Not prideful, this is fundamental, right? So unless you don't know. If you don't know, then easy for you to be drifted, to be challenged by those opinions, because it's one of the item on the shelf, so Let's think about right now is the people put on a mask, pretend to be somebody on Halloween party, whatever party. So I don't want to put a mask. Anyone's a mask. Anyone can, to pretend to be anybody. I want to know who God made me to be, so Alice can fundamentally change me. I will not be the same person I am today, for sure. So go ahead, finish your prayer.
Yes, Lord, that we would not be concerned about man's opinion of us, Lord, but yours alone, because, Lord, your view, Lord, your opinion, your, Lord, ways, Lord, surpass any other being, Lord, in existence. So, Lord, I pray that we would put our priorities and our concerns in you, Lord, and your concerns, Lord, and your plans. So, Lord, I pray that you would bless it, Lord, in Jesus' name.
Great, Lord, what do you see?
I saw, I think it was like just like a young girl that had like a bowl in her hands like this. I think she may have actually been
bowl means the vessel, right?
Vessel. Yeah, like a clay just bowl.
Okay.
Not like a
BOWL, right? So,
yes.
Okay. No,
yes.
BAL. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I could tell. I think it may have been inspired also by you mentioning what it would be like to be, like I say, a child within the continent of Africa, just having experienced that time.
Yeah.
So it was actually a young African girl, I think, too.
Oh, okay.
But what I saw happen was there was this source, this unidentified source that seemed to be coming actually just from the air almost, of water that was just coming into the bowl out of almost seemingly nowhere.
Oh.
And I saw that she was holding it with her hands at first, but then she began to hold the bowl just with her fingers. It was filling. And then it seemed like the bowl all of a sudden began to just drift away, and she wasn't holding it anymore, and the bowl was continuing to be filled.
Close your eye, Elijah, when you see a vision. First off. Sometimes I don't want to impress you, but I will see. Do you know sometimes I read things in people's lives? It's crazy. I don't do those things often, but I will tell you. There's certain friends you need to learn to distance yourself from them. There's no good influence in your life. Their interests, the word funny, the word good, word sharp, word noisy. The word very, quirky, whatever the word. Very interesting characters. Those oftentimes is problematic characters in life. Just noisy. They never have a quiet time to know themselves. They're not interested to know themselves. They're driven by senses. They're driven by whatever the thing in the moment. Nobody have a sensible and well-solid life will be drifters like that. They're fun, You can have a great party with them. You can drink with them. They're always fun on their own. But then have no grip, no depths, no substance in life. They're a waste of life. Like a fools. So you need to learn to see and receive true friends. Friends correct you, friends build you up, friend you want to look up to said, that's something I can learn. That's something I can partner with, something I can, that is a lifelong engagement. The simple things, very important, however, for the wise life. That's your choice. You want to be foolish, driven by senses, you will group those people together and drift. But nobody will have good life in that. I mean, this word pragmatic life in that. But eventually, you're going to suffer a lot of bruises, headaches, finally come to yourself, making sense. Well, what I did with my life, like I did. I'm not senseless young man. But I don't know. I'm just drifting, defined by the environment, the people, what they want. Not desire wrong thing, even. There's honorable things, good things. Good things. Career, position, have success in life, those are just common things people want. And that's what defined me. I never thought about that is not important actually in life before some of the more important things all along. So how old are you now? 50. No, okay. It's time to make some solid changes of friendship. You can do that. Or, the book can be your good friends. Music can be your good friends. Things can fill you up. Things can change you. And things cannot just encourage you or draw out the wrong kind of you and give you endorsement and freedom. Said, hey, that's good, that's fun, that's worthwhile. Do you understand my point? Well, when I was young, I'm a drifter. I go wherever my friends goes. So I encountered the extremes of life, extreme characters, okay? Gangsters. Just people just were careless about life, so people willing to die for you the next moment on the call. So I'm talking about we're interesting characters. So then people I respect. People can sit down with me, have a very meaningful conversation. They like me because I seems like those topics, like those engagement. So I'm like a bit magnetic, there's two kinds of people who will continually find me out. I will drift to you, to either circles. As a good, we're interested in life. I'm outsider, but I'm involved. So when it's peaceful, have a sense of meaning in life. When it's senseless, constantly in trouble, constantly run into heartache, brokenness, terrible, tragic situations in life. And in the wind, are called on the spot that the counsel them, to rescue them. So many people are saved from their tragic feat of life. I want to hear a little bit story. In college years, this girl used to have a classmates in my high school. I don't know her very well, but she is the daughter of the richest guy in our country. Turned out to be. I don't know that. But I went to college. I'm doing very good. So in those days, girls have a example, so they follow. I mean, my classmates, they're not able to go to college. The next year, they know who I am. I'm going to be influenced. So they write letters, ask me where I'm going. They want to go to college, where I'm staying. So she's this girl. She went down to college, but she struggled to follow my steps to go to the college where I am. Just made that effort. So when she arrived, she contacted me, said, I got college, I'm trying to learn to be a journalist. Can you teach me how to write articles? So things that nature. I thought, that's interesting. She told me certain stories. She is a talented young lady. Word talented. I'll tell you how talented it is. Usually you have a magazine, and a picture on the back. I remember the Van Gogh sunflower. We're colorful and beautiful picture, on this magazine. We don't have any painting skills, okay? So I had to in charge editing, like a blackboard, doing certain editing of the, my handwriting is good. And they asked me to in charge of things and organize people to do it. So I need pictures. I'm not drawer. So I said one day, okay, she knows how to draw. Okay, really? So she assigned to me. I said, Okay. How much you know? I need to interview with different people. So I'm not sure. I'm never done many things, but I said, okay, here's a magazine for you. So, I borrow all the colors, the chalk, different colors. So I said, okay, here's the deal. So try to mimic this picture. I will be back 15 minutes. Let me see what's going on. So I was so startled when she came back on this blackboard. She used very few colors, trying to find the right color. And she painted almost the exact picture with Van Gogh's painting on it. I was there, I was stunned, I was stunned. I said, what? Have you do painting before? Never. Have you tried to paint with chalk? Never. Are you real? Yes. The skill, right? I mean, looking very difficult, So, she did that, So I was very impressed by that. I give heavy praise. So, wow. Anyway, she's very good. Back to the story. Now I can talk a story of my life along those lot of things. But here's the story. She got in trouble with a boyfriend. The boyfriend was an artist, but she was used as a head gangster in our little town, in little cities. She was fighting with another classmate of mine, which is the son of the mayor, so, or the county head or whatever. So they fighting each other, So in the different schools, they would go to fight, bust out the fight. That's Chinese young people doing foolish things. But going to shoot the top, basically, he is a very good person. I mean, the best friend you can get. But it was just like living. This is one point. You living what kind of life? What kind of life? A very adventure, but a very senseless life. Very fun and hang around. So when he found his girlfriend has his good friend, he followed me. He just made occasion to find me, and said, you're my girlfriend friend. I got to be your friend. So my girl said, until you prove me, I can't continue the relationship. We can't engage relations with her. So I don't want to know who you are. I remember the first thing he banged in my door. I never heard him before. He was trying to threaten me. Go out. I want to talk to you. So we got to drink and talk through it. And at the end of the day, his perfumes apologized. Perfume said, I'm not saying right now why my girlfriend want you to show. I have no background where the audience make those things make you a little bit dizzy. So, oh yeah. So then he continued when he gradually come to entertain me, to come around to drink with me, So entertain me and drink, and I hung around, They eventually ended into trouble. They get those days not necessarily good thing in China, but they get together before the marriage without prove the endorsement of the father. And the father was a rich and powerful man in town. So heard this story, the father going to kill this boyfriend. We sent people on him to try to kill him. Stay in the hospital for 1 month. And threat again. The girl finally come to you, got to rescue my boyfriend. I had to make a special trip to go to see the father, to talk to the parents, to rescue this young man. And all the things, related. That's when I was 18, 19 years old, dragging into the situations. The people you care about or friendly, they cry to you, so they have no future, But young, 18, 19 years old, those things happened. They are my age. Senseless. That damages all the rest of their lives. And he says, damage the whole family. A lot of people being I'm a friend to all of them. I know their parents very closely. By the way, the first Christian I met is the first Christian I ever met. I thought it was such a foolish woman at the time. I thought was that this young man's mother with an underground church. And the son was scorned the father. But she always laughing. Oh, so happy, loving of the parents, love on the husband, love the son, But she can discipline the son, So God is spirit. I'm just always say, that's very nice lady. Why you guys don't like her? Why you give such a hard time? Because Christianity. Right now, if I know her, I will sort her up, try to give a hard time to the husband, the son for sure. But it's being now our culture. My point is that, what is the lesson? Young people don't know what they're doing. One thing another, one friend another. That young man is a good